Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's just past 3 o'clock. It's time for the left versus the right. And who better than to join me on this program but my frequent co-host, James Flippin. And we've got a lot to talk about today. We have a surprise ending to the show, so we won't tell you about it right now.
But we will say that John Sterling will probably enjoy it.
John Sterling, I think, will enjoy the ending to this show.
That's a tease.
So, James, let's talk about Venezuela. What constitutes a crime? What constitutes just defending the country, like when the boats were shot down? And where does the president go from here? He gave the pardon to Maduro, which was like, here's your pardon, now get out. That didn't happen. He's now threatened to attack by land, which I think in his heart of hearts, he really doesn't want to do that. But there's a part of me that would like to see him do that. So step in, James. Yeah. Where are you on that?
Well, Governor Paterson, good to be back with you on the left versus the right, and happy to be doing it again. I think that the Venezuela situation, it's a little bit kind of like I'm having a hard time getting really exercised by it. What I mean by that is I hope there's positives resulting from this. The speedboats that were taken out in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela in the Pacific, they have potentially been taking out all this fentanyl and all these opiates that are flooding into our shores otherwise. And obviously that's a good thing. I mean, I remember looking at the numbers when U.S. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona was crowing, as he has been, about how Pete Hegseth's a war criminal and he wants him brought up on charges and impeached and all this kind of stuff. I said, I wonder how many people in Arizona over the last 10 years have died of opiate overdoses. Looked it up. It's about 14,000 Arizona residents. So the senator from Arizona is more worried about playing political games over this whole issue than he is about the members of his own state that are dying from opiate overdoses. So I find it very telling, very sort of typical that these politicians on the left are blaming members of the Trump administration for doing something that's productive, namely taking out drug boats. You'll also see all these people online saying, oh, this is the end of due process. Oh, this is a war crime. Oh, this, that, the other thing. Look, let's not pretend that the military taking out narco-terrorist boats is something that falls under the concept of due process, okay? Give me a break. If there is a determination made by military agencies and intelligence agencies that these boats are carrying all kinds of fentanyl and heroin and coke and all this, then they're going to take it out. And that's under the Monroe Doctrine, Governor Paterson, because I attended history class. I know what that's all about. It's maintaining our quality of life in this half of the world, in this hemisphere. Okay, so you have to realize that this is bold action that's being taken in the face of a crisis that's killed hundreds of thousands of Americans over the last 10, 20 years. And look, I don't have to tell you, Governor Paterson, the war on drugs internally, trying to get them off the streets and bust sellers and lower scale dealers and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. You could go all the way back to Ronald Reagan. So the concept of cutting it off at the flow, taking out these big-time drug terrorists from Venezuela makes all the sense in the world. I understand the sensitivity to the concept of some guy who's just kind of doggy paddling in the water getting strafed by gunfire from a gunboat or something like that. Obviously, most people would agree there's elements of that could cross over into a war crime or whatever, but that's not what happened. These guys, especially in one of the videos called into question, were trying to scramble back onto the boat, save some of the drugs, contact their posse so they could come get the drugs and get them. They got taken out by the military. I'm not losing any sleep over it, Governor Paterson. I'm happy that these scumbag terrorist drug dealers are getting taken out. And frankly, just because you hate Donald Trump so much, you can't accept that that's a good thing. That's actually kind of sick and twisted. And apparently you will be celebrating and lifting up the virtue of drug dealers just because you hate this one particular politician in the U.S. so much. That's really sick and twisted.
No, I'm not going to lose any sleep either, James. This might be the left versus the right, but I couldn't agree with you more. The thing that really, let's start with this. Did you happen to hear the clip that John and Rita played on the 5 o'clock show last week, where Joe Biden is lecturing Ronald Reagan? This is in 1989. Mm-hmm. This is as Reagan is coming to the end of his service. And at this particular time, Biden is saying, we're not doing enough. We need to be going to these countries and finding the people who are bringing these drugs into the country. And sometimes you have to attack them on their own soil. He says that. And if that guy was transported through the time machine to right here in 2025, he would be the most popular Democrat or Republican in the whole country for saying this.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what he said to do. I think Donald Trump has made more hay overtaking courses that previous Democratic presidents took than the previous Republicans. And he's turned the whole thing into a realistic situation that why are we chasing people around and going into places where law enforcement could be killed? Why are we getting people to go undercover and then they get exposed and they get shot?
Yeah.
When we could go to the cause of the problem. Isn't that what doctors say you do to solve, to try to fight a disease?
You cut the cancer out.
Cut it out. And really, frankly, unlike the misfortune that a lot of cancer patients have, if you cut out this type of criminal warfare that's going on right now, it wouldn't be replaced. The people who live there would stop it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I just want to say that I think that I speak for a lot of the so-called MAGA spectrum when I say there is a lot of hesitancy to get involved in regime change. There is a lot of hesitancy to put boots on the ground regardless of where it is or how it applies. I do think that in terms of making a comparison between, say, like Africa or the Middle East in comparison to this situation in South America, the one thing that you have going for you in Venezuela is the people don't want Maduro. They held the election, the fake stolen election. I mean, we talk about that kind of stuff here in the United States, which is a lot more nuanced with ballot harvesting and weird mail-in voting laws and this kind of thing. Maduro basically was just like, sorry, that didn't happen. Much like Vladimir Putin, I call the shots, even in a so-called democratic election. And so you have a potential groundswell of support for somebody not being president in the case of Maduro. And we know Machado just got the Peace Prize as a result of, her efforts as the sort of opposition party. But I think that there is a lot of upside to what's going on here. I don't know exactly how it's going to play itself out. I kind of hope that Maduro just decides to leave and then lives in exile and we can sort of see a more prosperous future for Venezuela, less drugs and narco-terrorists coming into the United States. That would be nothing but a positive. But yeah, again, I just have to reiterate this point that right now, everything that's going on in politics, and it's a result of a lot of different things. Social media, cable news, you make a name for yourself by being one of these extremists. But the anti-Trump sentiment is so warped that you've got people on the left literally celebrating the concept of illegal drug use because they hate Trump so much. Like, this is what's weird about this whole Venezuela thing is I think there's been a lot of convincing yourself from the left that drugs, opiates, heroin, needles, fentanyl, whatever, are not that big a deal. They've got the safe injection sites. They've got the overdose rehab sites or whatever where you're supposed to be able to, I guess a babysitter sits there and make sure you might need Narcan. They give it to you. This kind of thing is bad for society. It's not a positive. None of this whole looking the other way on sick poison like this is a good thing. It's not exactly akin to weed or marijuana, although you could make that comparison. It's something worse than that. And we've seen it plague communities time and time again. It makes all the sense in the world to, as you said, Governor Paterson, cut out the cancer. Let's move on.
You know, I could probably give you a list, James, of 10 things that the president could have done better, in my view, or shouldn't have done at all. However, this is so obvious. And frankly, had a Democratic president taken this route, because after Ronald Reagan, nobody even seemed to worry about the drug problem for another 8 to 12 years.
Right.
And it had a Democrat acted in the way that President Trump is acting right now, I strongly believe that the Republicans would have backed off. They would have let it go.
It would have been a losing message in the media for sure, because a lot of their supporters, they're more hawkish and pro-action supporters would have said, well, what are you doing opposing this kind of thing? We actually want this to be done. Here's the other aspect of this that's a little bit kind of nuanced. Fentanyl changed everything, right? We just saw this week Andy Dick, the actor, overdosed on the streets of LA, I think it was. And what you have to remember, I can think about a few years ago covering this press conference the NYPD were holding where they said, hey, if you're going out for New Year's Eve and you're one of these people who once a year takes like a bump of cocaine or something like that at a house party, think twice, because all the reefer madness stuff aside, all the PSAs aside from the 1970s, you actually could die from taking one particular hit when it's involving fentanyl. That's how strong it is. That's how potent it is. And it's a synthetic opioid. It's not actually cutting up the poppies and letting them dry and chopping them up and all this. It's a drug that's made from the lab. And it's 1,000,000 times, or whatever the number is, more potent than cocaine and heroin. It's poison. And we have every reason to want to stop it from killing Americans. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think if it was somebody like a Biden or a Barack Obama who had taken this kind of bold step, it would be celebrated in a lot of different circles.
And I think that really galls me, because members of my own party, we've stood together on a whole lot of things, have gotten caught up in, what do they call it, Trump derangement syndrome?
Trump derangement syndrome,
where they really don't think that had they given mild support, not even going way out about it, that we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
And all the negative criticism and the, I think, voluminous, like, exaggerating of what the law really is has really hurt the country and has really hurt the movement to stop drugs. And so what if President Trump got up tomorrow and said, I'm tired of you all bothering me about drugs. You all deal with it. I'm going to go back to running the country, dealing with Israel, dealing with Putin, and you all take care of it.
And it would be an effective thing to say and do, because it would sort of be like, all right, hey, back to you guys. If this is an issue that Congress feels is so important that, you need to be the watchdogs on this, and we're taking action to try to stop this, and you're more worried about that, then you guys handle the enforcement. Because at the end of the day, the truth is, for many, many, many years, you heard Democrats and Republicans, politicians on both sides of the aisle, talking about the opioid crisis and how we need to do something about the opioid crisis. And oh my God, this is so devastating. Parents and family members are heartbroken because they lost people. It's increasingly younger and younger, and it's just absolutely devastating. This happens for both parties in politics, so I think it's fair to note that, Governor Paterson, right? Like the Obamacare push, Republicans obviously were more like, well, let's fight against this as much as possible because it's sort of Obama's signature thing. And rather than maybe trying to negotiate something that could have been a little more beneficial to Republicans and figure out a way that it could be better for both, that didn't happen. You had this protracted fight over the concept in and of itself. And now, all these years later, we're staring down these jacked up premiums because the sunset clause on that legislation is going to cause people to have to pay more for health care.
That's right.
It's a problem. You have a lot of fighting in D.C. that even on certain issues, you probably could find common ground. And the idea of Maduro and his, guerrilla fighters down in Venezuela being taken out so that we stop having all this opiates come into the country should be an easy one. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's figure out how way to support these operations. And even if we have to try to have some watchdog to make sure we don't have anything that's along the lines of war crime or whatever, fine, we'll do that. But we're not going to oppose it at every turn.
James, when I went to the legislature in 1985, and I represented Harlem and the Upper West Side. Now, there couldn't be two communities that were more favorable to what you would call the liberal or left philosophy.
Sure.
But when I got there, I realized that now and then one of my Republican colleagues would get up and say something, and to me it made a lot of sense. But what you're allowed to do is indicate that the whole party is voting the same way. So they put the bill out, party vote in the majority, Republicans have won, and then instead of adding on, we do party vote in the negative. So basically, why did we even have a debate when everybody knew how they were going to vote? Mm-hmm. And it actually bothered me. And I think it was what moved my way of negotiating and addressing issues there to the point where I could be seen as somebody who was reasonable. Mm-hmm. And I was able to do that. And this would come back to really help me 20 years later when I become governor. And I found that a lot of my colleagues who were still around, or the ones that replaced the ones who were still around, were not going after me the way they were going after Spitzer, or the way they had gone after Mario Cuomo. And it just shocked me that more people in the party would not see the advantage, because in the end, we are trying to beat each other in elections. We know if we beat each other in elections, the winner gets the patronage. But how far are you going to go? How far are you going to move away from what's reasonable to try to exact your position on the public win? And then what are you going to do when the problem comes up again? Mm-hmm. Ask the Republicans for help? Right. They might not want to help you.
Well, I think that there's other things that do need to sort of be mentioned, and you're just jogging my memory a little bit because you invoked the concept of lawmakers getting into debate and all this kind of thing. Let's just keep this in mind, Governor Paterson, and I'll throw it out there at a very surface level. But some of the opposition to cleaning up corruption in Ukraine, for example, some of the interest in sort of keeping that fight going between Ukraine and Russia, in my view, lies in lawmakers who stand to make money off that sort of thing. What do I mean by that? Spending.
I'm about to ask you.
Spending, kickbacks, lobby dollars, whatever it may be. There's a ton of corrupt stuff that goes on in a place like Ukraine, for example. And lawmakers, for whatever reason, and I don't have to get into the nitty gritty, they have a reason to see that kind of thing continue. Venezuela, unfortunately, is a similar situation down in South America. Very corrupt, lots of money going in and out of there. People are able to benefit from that kind of shady situation. So there are certain lawmakers in Congress, and I'm not even suggesting it's Democrat, Republican, whatever. I think it's both sides of the aisle, who stand to benefit from a weird, corrupt slush fund situation like that, and they don't necessarily have any interest in Maduro not being president anymore. That's all I'm going to say. I'll keep it super surface level. I know we have to hit a break and continue the discussion on the other side, but just follow the money sometimes. There's reasons that these people in power like some of those bad situations sometimes.
Well, James, I'm going to follow the money, and I'm going to follow the words from our sponsors who are coming up right now. You're listening to The Left versus the Right. He's James Flippin. I'm David Paterson. And we are so excited about you all coming back that we'll be here as soon as these messages are done.
Concluded.
Finished.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Take my word for it. I live there. Come to Florida. Get pre-approved right now with my guy Michael Kotze. Call him at 561-441-2730. He's got Choice Mortgage and a great real estate team. Get pre-approved right now. Michael Kotze, 561-441-2730. Buy in Florida right now. Don't wait. Save money on state taxes. Make your move today with Choice Mortgage. Trust me, Florida is waiting. This guy's so good, he did my commercials in Florida too. Mike Kotze, 561-441-2730. A ride.
Someone convinced you that homeschooling was going to be so much fun and you've got to give it a try, you're never going to look back, and you said okay, and now you're sitting here thinking, what in the world did I get myself into? I've got you for history. For years we have used America's History Volume 1 and 2 by Tuttle Twins. I love it because it's open and go. My kids love it because it feels like extended story time. I would highly recommend you check out America's History Volume 1 and 2 by Tuttle Twins. Pick these up today. You will thank me for it later, and you've got this.
The Lincoln Wishlist sales event is happening now. Here's what's on everyone's wish list. Enjoying holiday jingles with brilliant 3D audio that surrounds you? Check. Watching snow flurries through the panoramic Vista roof? Check. Packing up presents with the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Check. Everything you want. All standard on the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com for exceptional offers on 2025 Lincoln vehicles today.
From writer-director Ryan Johnson.
The Holy Grail. A perfectly impossible crime.
Wake Up Dead Man has critics singing its praises.
God help me. Anything else?
It's a deliciously entertaining mystery.
That's nice.
It's certified fresh.
It's a miracle.
Okay, you're freaking me out now.
It's the best Knives Out movie yet.
This case is solvable, right?
Oh, you'll see. It's fun.
Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery starring Daniel Craig. Now playing on Netflix. The Left versus the Right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we are privileged to have James Flippin with us again. Whenever people find out he's coming on the show, the needle just goes up. And he is one of WABC's new superstars. And we're talking about the issue of corruption benefiting those who profit from corruption, which I dare say, James, has happened in a number of states here in the United States.
That's for sure.
And probably small countries surrounding the United States.
I mean, our boss, our fearless leader, John Catsimatidis, I was hosting the morning show with him this past week on, I guess it was Tuesday, because Sid was down in D.C., and we had a protracted discussion about Medicaid in New York and also food stamps and how Kathy Hochul has refused to provide the names or the roles behind food stamps. And in essence, the question then becomes, why? What do you have against that? I mean, you know, I guess there's some sort of purported privacy concerns, or you don't want to put it out there. It's potentially sort of a source of shame or embarrassment if you're on food stamps. I mean, I don't know. But why wouldn't you want to share that information?
I agree completely. And James, I owe you one. Do you know why I owe you one?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, maybe I bought you a Coke recently.
When the great leader of the station, John Catsimatidis, realized that Sid wouldn't be there on Tuesday, he initially, they contacted me.
Yeah, as normally that you'd be the guy in the chair there.
And they contacted me, but, I've always told them that I really don't read my text that often. By the time I read the text, it was 11 o'clock in the evening.
I've learned that about you, by the way. Texting is not necessarily the best way to get in touch.
Get in touch with me.
No.
And so I thought, I'll bet that James is going to get rolled out of bed.
That was him.
At 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
But I'm sure it was a good show.
Yeah,
and it was an excellent topic to be talking about.
We always have a good time, John and I. To me, it's kind of a chance to dig in on the perspective of the boomer generation, so to speak. My father and John are the same age, so
right.
There's a lot of crossover in terms of that understanding and sensibility about kind of the way society was and is. And you mentioned Reagan, for example. My father was a Reagan conservative, a guy who kind of in the 60s was more left of center and had certain feelings about Vietnam and certain feelings about society in general. And I think what happens is at some point...
But then your father moved as time went on.
Well, you know what it is? I think there's certain things about Reagan that really resonated with him, and he passed it on to me, and it's definitely influenced my political thinking. Reagan was well known for certain quotes. One of them was, government's the problem, not the solution. And be wary of any time somebody from the government says, I'm here to help. Because so often you're talking about these agencies or these processes that are sort of designed to perpetuate themselves, right? If you're a congressman, if you're and we've had discussions on this show months ago, Governor Paterson, when it was myself with Anthony Weiner, for example, he would really bristle at this kind of thing. Because he'd say, well, these lawmakers have to fight for the money for their constituencies. And if it's not for this military installment or this factory, then it's going to go to some other constituency. And then, you're giving away from Idaho to give to Texas and all this kind of thing. And I said, okay, I understand that. My point is, in an overarching way, the amount of government that goes in, amount of money that goes into the government, I should say, is never really used efficiently. It's never really used with any sort of urgency or agency, no pun intended. So that's really what it comes down to for me is I'm always looking at this askew with the perspective of, okay, somebody in this whole process is getting paid, and it's not the American taxpayer. I mean, you see what's going on in Minneapolis right now, for example, with the Somali community and these billions upon billions of dollars of fraud. It just really makes you wonder, how much of this money that we're putting into the government is really being used for anything other than lining certain people's pockets.
It's an unfortunate situation. It's probably in some ways going on forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not something I think we could stop the drug trafficking if we really felt like it. But I don't know if we could stop this because there's just too much incentive. And as much as people say they're going to be fair, they're not. I was going to say one thing about President Reagan. In 1964, when Barry Goldwater was running against Lyndon Baines Johnson, who had, of course, succeeded after President Kennedy's assassination, Reagan really took offense at some of the things that were said about Barry Goldwater. And I remember the anger. I was 10 years old, but I saw this, the anger and just the futility of his attempts to try to reverse that. But then, so I didn't like him. I put it that way.
Reagan didn't like him.
Right, right. But then in 1966, when he won and became the governor of California, and just the way he worked with people, always seemed to be in the spotlight, is when I thought, you know what? I better, whether I like him or not, I better start respecting him because he could get elected president around here one of these days, and he sure did 14 years later. And really, as a president, and his communication was just excellent. Mm-hmm. Even in the presidential debates, they would say, Mr. President, you're out of time. And he would say, that's okay. They said, we'll try to come back to you. And he goes, no, that's fine. Like, he was just the consummate gentleman.
Yeah.
even though he had a very strong position about a lot of issues, that most people who spoke to those issues were very conservative, but often their decorum, it
was kind of grating.
Was grating, exactly.
Yeah, it was sort of very in your face and antagonistic and stuff like that. And yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about. I think that there is something about politicians where you need to be really passionate, fervent, stick strong to your point, but there has to be an air of optimism in the stuff you're talking about, because otherwise it just becomes the teacher in class who's berating you and telling you it's wrong and never offering you an alternate vision and this kind of, I think Bill Clinton was good about that, right? Like he really wanted to make it seem as though we all believe in the upside of America and that there's more good things to come. And for Reagan, of course, it's morning in America. And even a guy like Trump, right? I mean, he is all about make America great again. Like it's coming. It's in the future. We're not just talking about stuff that's gone wrong and things that are bad. Of course, he has no problem doing that. But it's also make America great again. Further down the road, we're going to have prosperous times. We're going to have good times. We're headed toward that direction. And I think a politician has to have that as their core tenet, or else people aren't going to buy in. I mean, there's only so much you can do with the negative selling as a politician. And it can work sometimes. I think that the 2020 election was generally all about, wow, everybody who hates Trump, come out and vote for this husk of a human and Joe Biden. But it doesn't necessarily tend to work that way. And that was also a special circumstance with the COVID rules and the mail-in ballots and all that stuff.
Well, given what has gone on the past few months with the government shutdown in Washington, with feuding to some degree over the interest rate, 3 members of the board voted against the dropping the interest rate by a quarter, which is the first time that's happened in 6 years. How do you think all of this affects something that we're going to blink our eyes, we're going to do a couple more left versus right shows, and then we're in an election year?
Midterms, yeah.
Coming real soon.
Very much so.
To hopefully all of you who are listening and us who are reporting on how we might look at that period.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously stuff happened this week with Blakeman officially getting in for the New York governor's race. There's that kind of squint and listen close. It's a rumor maybe that Andrew Cuomo is going to try to get back into the governor's race. Governor Paterson is going to. No, I'm kidding. Nothing, not that we know of. Yeah, the governor's race is something that's going to factor in for our local listeners, and then of course the midterms are something we're already focusing on. You said the interest rate and the decision that was just made by the central bank this week, the third straight rate cut, I think. Powell then made some comments after, Jerome Powell, saying one more in 2026, one more in 2027. Won't necessarily be his show to run because his term expires in May of this coming year. But Trump was out in Pennsylvania touting his economic agenda, saying that tariffs have actually raised a bunch of money for the United States and that it's incentivized businesses to invest in the United States. Powell said that he thinks the inflation that's been brought on by tariffs is going to kind of work its way through soon. And he also anticipated higher GDP gains for the U.S. in 2026, which would potentially be a result of all that investment coming in because people want to avoid the tariffs. So, yeah, I think the economy thing right now is a minefield for any politician. I think that government spending has been so rampant for so long, and it was so intensified during COVID that inflation really did spike to kind of crazy levels to the point where over a 2-year period, you turned around a couple of times, you noted, and it's like, whoa, what happened to my grocery bill? Why is it $250 as opposed to $125? Whatever. Right. And that makes it hard because any politician who's in the chair at that moment is going to be blamed for it. I think Trump has tried to say, hey, don't look at me, it's this, that, the other, but it doesn't work that way. Any politician that's in the chair is going to face it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that this whole concept of the midterms going the way of the Democrats, I don't know, maybe. Republicans can't really get their act together in the sense that they continuously sort of want to say, oh, wow, do we want to be on Trump's side on this one, or should we go against him? And what's going to play best in the media? And how's the voting public going to pay attention to that? They don't really have any conviction. They don't really have any beliefs. They're just kind of trying to keep their seat in Congress for as long as they possibly can. So that type of thing does lend itself to vulnerability in the midterm elections.
And I think one of the unique aspects of President Trump's conduct in the past few weeks is he's really challenging his own party, to stick with me or find out what happens when you don't stick with me.
Sure.
And there is certainly, 24 hours in politics is a lifetime, as we know, but it could be really a very interesting year. Next year, Trump running on, a reasonable number of bills that he's passed, laws he's signed, and executive actions that he's taken against someone who's got to figure out a way to make it appear that he can't, he's not running again, but to make it appear that the Republicans took us in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I think that the average voter pays attention to really surface level stuff. So we've talked about it on this show before. The government shutdown tended to benefit Democrats politically, even though they were sort of the source of it, right? They were the ones who kind of engineered the concept of a shutdown, because funding the government and passing a continuing resolution just so you can keep the lights on, most of the time that doesn't stretch into the political, right? Like most of the time you're not going to use the leverage of a potential shutdown.
Everybody knows their duty.
Right. Like in essence, you want to keep the government running, but the nuclear option exists that you can do that. The problem is that I think it really did benefit most of the Democratic politicians, because people said, oh, well, here we go. Trump's in power. Oh, it's the Trump Congress. It's this, that, the other. And they don't really understand the nuance behind it. So I don't really know what to expect. I think that most of the time the party in power is going to have a hard time maintaining its incumbency and is going to have a tough time, because there's always this, oh, well, we can do it better. We can do it better. And the people who are getting fired up along those lines may or may not be inspired enough by a candidate to go out and head to the polls. But in essence, the Republican Party still has a problem. The Trump period is coming to a close soon, right? I'm a huge fan of his, think he's been a great president, but no matter what, after the next several years, he's not going to be president anymore. I'm sure he'll maintain some sort of elder status in the party type thing, but it's going to have to be, a Marco Rubio that runs for president, or a J.D. Vance, or whoever it may be. So that next generation of Republican brand has to be established. And whether it continues to be strong on the crackdown on illegal immigration side, or if it's going to be more on the side of we don't want to launch these foreign wars, we don't want to be involved in foreign wars, whatever, both of those very strong tenets of MAGA, I think that would make a lot of sense. But we kind of haven't seen the ability to capture the passion of the right of center vote outside of when it's Trump that's really pulling those levers.
Right. Now, I heard that J.D. Vance is sending money to the Tim Walz campaign committee, hoping that the Democrats will take him as the vice presidential candidate like they did the last time, and then he can mop up the floor with him.
Well, Governor Paterson, we have to take a break so we can continue that discussion on the other side. But if on the outside chance Vice President J.D. Vance is listening to this, please don't send money to the state of Minnesota, because it very well could end up funding terrorism in Somalia sometime soon.
Good point. We'll be back with our final version of The Left versus the Right here on WABC on a pretty good Saturday afternoon, considering the last couple of days. We'll be right back.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Left versus the Right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back. on The Left versus the Right. Just remember, coming up at 4 o'clock following this program is John Sterling. He's here every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 5, and I'm sure he's got a lot to say about some issues we'll probably cover before this segment is over. But right now, we're talking about presidential candidates for 2028.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a long way away.
Yeah. When you say it like that, it makes it feel like a long time because we're just about to jump into 2026.
Right.
So.
But I think people are trying to identify themselves as potential candidates.
Yeah.
I think Vance did a lot for himself in the last race, particularly when he was in the debate with Tim Walz, and Walz said something. And he said, I'd have to think about that. That's kind of a good point. And then Walz went back to it as if Vance had criticized him.
Right.
Showing that he wasn't paying much
really
attention.
Paying close attention.
Maybe that's why his name is Walz. There's a wall between him and any kind of dialogue.
He's got to try to dance around that wall.
Right, exactly.
Do a little waltz.
So there's another place where there's a lot of activity right now. You touched on it before, but I'd like to get into it a little more. The rumors floating around about potential. Well, Kathy Hochul already has a primary challenge from a lieutenant governor.
Oh, that's right, Delgado.
Yeah, who is, I think, a narcissist who thinks that because of his school grades, and I don't know what he did as lieutenant governor. When I was lieutenant governor, we had press conferences. We got things done. And but anyway, he's in the race. And does that open the door?
Would you say you're less than impressed with Antonio Delgado?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm less impressed.
Nice.
With Mr.
So you even
Delgado.
downgraded it a little bit. Okay.
Yes. So, but that leaves Hochul running unopposed, we assume. Now, Andrew Cuomo has wanted to be governor and has been trying to become governor since 2002. And I think I told you the story about when he called me in 2002.
Yeah.
And he acted like he was my best friend. And he said, hey, are we going to let these new guys take it over? And I mean, his father had been governor for His father had been governor for, I'm just trying to remember. His father...
At least 2 terms, right?
Well, it was at least 2 terms and going on 3 when he was beaten. So now Andrew comes back, and that's when I said to him, so what you're saying, Andrew, is they have to be 2 Cuomo mayors before they can be 2 Cuomo governors before they can be 1 black governor? And he was really taken aback by that. But
good for you.
It seems like,
by the way,
whatever. If I were the former governor, if I were him, and he and I talk a lot, I wouldn't have run for mayor of the city of New York. It's too hard. There's too many things going on, and there's a lot of coverage. You can't, cover things up like you might in a statewide campaign. What if he hadn't run for mayor of the city of New York? Then we presume that the mayor-elect would have had a stiffer challenge and perhaps even fewer candidates to run against. And that might have been an interesting race. But now it leaves the door open for him to run 1-to-1 against Hochul, which I think would be interesting, but I can't see how he wins it. When listening to him during the campaign, it sounded to me like he was straining.
Yeah.
Like he was trying to make it happen.
And it's just like at this point, is cloying the right word? Can I just say, like, he's so desperate for he's like, please give me a job. Please give me a job. He could have tried to drop out for a while, come back, I guess, blame everything on the Me Too movement and say it never really happened. And, yes, did he try to maybe date somebody that he thought was interested in and it didn't work out? And everybody's done that once or twice. And, unfortunately, that was embarrassing for him or something like that. But the biggest problem I think for him is you're talking about two negative issues that are really hard to get around given the voting propensity of New Yorkers, right? COVID was something that affected everybody. Everybody had to deal with it. And the fact that he is rightly or wrongly, I won't even get into that, blamed for the nursing home thing, for some of the issues that were more like in your face and draconian and, you can't go out, you can't worship, you can't do this, you can't do that. He is the face of all that. For a while, it was a big positive when he was the Cuomo sexuals and all that.
Right.
Then it became a negative because of the nursing home and some of the people saying, I don't like the way this COVID stuff went. Furthermore, the sexual harassment stuff, I don't have to tell you, Governor Paterson, because you spend so much time in politics, you need women who buy the groceries for their family to vote for you. And if you've been accused, either credibly or uncredibly, by upwards of a half dozen women of sexual harassment, that's going to make it really hard to get a plurality amongst that women vote. Yeah. And New York City, obviously it didn't work out for him, although he got kind of close. New York State, it potentially would be even worse.
I must say that I noticed this about the former governor. I've kind of addressed it with him. He kind of goes along with it, and then he goes right back to where he is. What he should have done, and he should have done this before he ran this year, he should have done it some time back, is got up and said, I am very pleased that the law enforcement officials have looked at this case and have declined to prosecute me over any of these cases. Mm-hmm. This makes me feel very relieved. However, I think I do understand how a number of women took umbrage with statements I made around them, flirting where it was inappropriate, telling jokes that would be offensive toward women.
Yep.
I did that.
Yep.
And I realize now why the interpretation was that the next thing I was going to do was something even worse.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
I've learned the lesson. I want to apologize to all of the women, and I hope that they will let me move on.
That's a really, it's too bad that he didn't take your advice in sort of doing it that way, Governor Paterson, because that would be a masterclass of handling that, in my view. I think, and I'm not a woman, never will be one, in spite of the fact that we kind of have some of that stuff happen sometimes in 2025. That being said, I think that most women are understanding of guys that can sometimes be a cad, kind of a dog, sort of aggressive in the way that they are about showing women how much they appreciate them and all that kind of thing. But if you take your foot off the gas, apologize for having been a bit of a jerk, then it's almost like, oh, well, he is a jerk, but he can also be nice sometimes. And women sort of start to change their perception of that person a little bit and say, well, at the end of the day, he is a man, so I have to cut him some slack for being a dog, being a jerk, but at least he is acknowledging of the fact that he kind of can do that sometimes. That is the only way you turn that sort of thing around, whether it's a personal interaction with somebody or if it's a politician who's trying to convince a whole group of people that they're a certain type of way. So, yeah, he tried to just run from it. He tried to just kind of bury his head in the sand and figure it would pass over, and it doesn't happen.
And they'd ask him the question in almost every appearance he made when he would, when they'd ask the question on his behalf, I would feel like I'm freezing.
Yeah.
And then he would freeze.
Right.
And it just didn't sound sincere. I mean, all these things could be changed, but it just seemed to me he didn't take the time. What's your biggest weakness? Go at it. When the issue of if you'd ever tried drugs came up, right as I became governor, I got up and I said, yes. I thought all reporters were going to fall off their chairs.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, listen, I was 17, 18 like everyone else. I was in college. I did this stuff. And then, when I wanted to go to law school and, change things, I stopped doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it was that after that press conference that I held, it didn't come up anymore.
Right.
What could you say?
Yeah, because you confront it head on and you say,
he lied. He lied about what? He said he used drugs.
However, I will say...
He lied about how long it was.
But the William F. Buckleys of the world were saying, Governor Paterson with his marijuana and his hip-hop music, and he's going...
Yes. Well, you definitely invite that that commentary in.
Yeah.
But I actually didn't get it. I mean, I got it over legitimate issues involving government, mistakes I might have made or that kind of thing. But James, you will not believe the candidates
people
you can bring something up.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, what about the fact that your campaign treasury has unexplained loss of $50,000? Everybody knows that, you could lose something like in your home and then you find it under your bed, trying to get around the issue.
Yeah, right.
And it never works.
No, you
never
have to.
Works.
People crave sincerity. People crave honesty, even if it is sort of with a slight sleight of hand as saying, hey, I don't think it was really as bad as what people are saying I did, but there's probably some things I did that weren't so great. So I acknowledge that, and I'd like to apologize, or whatever it may be. It's sort of one of those where you kind of halfway do it, and then you try your best to move on. Speaking of speaking sincerely, Governor Paterson, I know we're up against it, and that John Sterling will be coming in next. So we're going to get into some Mets discussion here, because I know there's any number of listeners who are probably still feeling very, very sore, very emotional over the loss of not only Eleanor Diaz, as I like to call him, or Pete Alonso. And I want to give you the floor in a second here, Governor Paterson, because I think you're going to speak for the more the majority of Mets fans who are feeling really down right now. I just can't get upset about breaking up this version of the Mets. Last year's team was a disgrace. I mean, I hated watching them play last year. You fall behind in the middle innings, game over. Not going to mount a comeback.
How do you have the best record in baseball in June and then have the worst record for the rest of the year, save two other teams?
Yeah, and how do you, right, exactly. The White Sox and the Nationals were the only team who had a worse record, I think, after May. So you had a team that was less than the sum of its parts. And you also had a team that never had a ninth inning comeback the entire 162-game season. They never had a comeback in the ninth inning. That suggests that something's broken, not just on a roster level, but also possibly on like a clubhouse level. And I think that they needed to do something drastic. The easy thing for David Stearns to do would have been, let's run this back. Everybody loves Pete Alonso. Everybody loves Brandon Nimmo. And I get it. And I also just want to say, this is not to suggest that Pete Alonso or Brandon Nimmo are to blame for the Mets not having gotten the ultimate prize over the last couple of years. It wouldn't be fair to say that, and I'm not trying to say that. But I do think that the team needed a big shakeup, a big change, and they're not done yet. We know there's going to be things to come this offseason. And I'm proud of Pete Alonso. He got the big money, and he's going to be down there eating the crab cakes and hitting the home runs for the Orioles. But I do hope that Edwin Diaz never wins a World Series. I would celebrate as hard as if the Mets win one if Edwin Diaz never went. Eleanor Diaz.
I'm so surprised to hear you say this, because I've never been a big Diaz fan, even though he did have 168 saves over 7 years or that kind of thing. But I felt there were too many situations where he should have just retired the side. He creates a problem.
Correct.
Usually gets out of it, but sometimes got blasted.
Absolutely. And look, I would love nothing more than for his velocity to dip, his crappy sliders not getting anybody out then, and I hope he's terrible. I hope he is absolutely horrific in an LA Dodgers uniform. That would give me joy. Is that sick and twisted of me to say? Probably, but you know what? I can't stand him. And he had you know what? He ran from New York. He was never cut out for New York. Couldn't handle it. So he's going to go down to the palm trees and the celebrities and the Hollywood and, be just another piece. Just another part of the Dodgers. Well, I hope it doesn't work out for him. That's all I can say.
Let's give the Dodgers another excellent player.
Yeah. So exciting. Oh, are they going to win a third World Series? Oh, wow.
There you have it, listeners, to the left versus the right. the new general manager of the New York Mets, James Flippin, is giving you an idea of when he gets together with Steve Cohen. And I don't know what they need the guy from Milwaukee from. What did Milwaukee ever win?
David Stearns, he's got some work to do.
He's got to go.
But I'll say this, Governor Paterson, John Sterling on these airwaves last year noted how it really worked out well for the Yankees to miss out on Soto. They picked up Bellinger, they picked up Goldschmidt, they had the ability to spread the money around, and it actually, hey, let's not forget, they made the playoffs.
They sure did. Sure did.
I'm not losing any sleep, there's that phrase again, over breaking up the Mets. Sad that Alonso's gone, but we move on.
Stay tuned for John Sterling, everybody. This is David Paterson along with James Flippin. We really enjoyed this hour of the left versus the right. And next week, we'll find something to fight about. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here? Take my word for it. I live there. Come to Florida. Get pre-approved right now with my guy Michael Kotze. Call him at 561-441-2730. He's got Choice Mortgage and a great real estate team. Get pre-approved right now. Michael Kotze, 561-441-2730. Buy in Florida right now. Don't wait. Save money on state taxes. Make your move today with Choice Mortgage. Trust me, Florida is waiting. This guy's so good, he did my commercials in Florida too. Mike Kotze, 561-441-2730. A ride.